That's probably the main lesson that I feel is just like as a nugget, as a valuable life lesson, is the separation of you and your thoughts. You know what I mean?
Mm,
You're not your
mm,
thoughts. And that's obvious in some situations. When you get deep into meditation, you really start to experience that. I think it's one of the valuable lessons there. Fasting, you can experience it too,
yeah.
because you realize there's this nature you're contending with
Mm,
that is just there. You know what I mean? It's like the voice that's telling you, like, so if you decide to say no to yourself, really in any regard, there's a voice that starts saying, you're only doing this for attention. You're just doing this to prove your dad wrong.
mm.
You know, you're just a sellout. And even if you succeed at this, it won't matter. And it's amazing how much that voice comes up when you're, yeah, 80 miles in on the bike and
Sure.
you're
No, I
feeling a little
bet.
tired. Oh, it's coming up. You know what, man? You're not who you say you are the whole
Mm,
time. You're just like, you have to smile and you're like, welcome back, baby. Like,
mm.
I knew
God,
you were coming.
I never, I 100% understand what you're talking about, but I don't know. For me, I think it's just because of I've never had, I suppose, a positive experience with any kind of endurance
Mm,
events or sports in my life. I was always more short bursts of kind of anaerobic power. That was usually the kind of
yeah,
sports that I would excel at. Um, and of course, you're going to have your biases when you're better at those kinds of things. But I find that
yeah,
really
exactly.
profound. I find that really profound because, as somebody who's I'd say a fairly proficient meditator myself, I'm very familiar with that narrative and the
Yeah,
identification with the witness as opposed to identification with the thoughts and the emotions that you're having at the time,
yeah,
and how
exactly.
that's what you're doing. When you're 70 miles in on the bike, you're meditating, and it's kind of this weird tug of war where
Hmm.
the more you start to identify with those thoughts and with those emotions, you start to spiral down, well, to when you eventually quit. But if you can
Yeah, to
remain
quitting.
stoic and
Yep.
in the seat of the witness, and like you said, just kind of smiling through it, and I can imagine it being
Yeah.
so fascinating to just be in that, because this is going to happen to you soon, and maybe this conversation will prompt up in your mind, is that you're kind of like, what it's like watching two strangers like outside your
It is.
house, like argue, and they're trying to come in, and you're just kind of watching them and just going, if I let you in, you're going to ruin everything right now. So I have to just keep watching you, and eventually they will go
Yeah.
away. They will go away. That's the
Yep.
funny part, and the really, I suppose, the part where you break through in meditation is that when
Hmm.
you don't succumb to that,
Yeah.
you realize they just go away of their own accord, and then what's left is
Yeah.
this kind of like just peace, and you start to get back into that kind of like flow,
Yeah.
like very intense, that meditative state you get when
Yeah.
you're in a sports event. So yeah,
No
that's
mind.
fascinating. Yeah, no mind.
Yeah. No, no mind. Yeah. That's the best. You know, the way that I would frame it too is it feels like, I don't know if you've ever had like a discussion or a heated argument with a spouse or with a family member or something.
Mm,
But you know, when you're like kind of surface level, there's tension and you're
yeah.
like kind of trying to piece through it and you're just being patient. And then all of a sudden you break through and it's like the features soften. And then it's like
Mm,
you remember, like, oh, that's what we are. You know, it's like the greater context comes forward and it is reunified with where you're supposed to be at. That's what it feels like. Because that little
wow.
voice that's kind of spurring around, you know, it's like you're just doing that because you want to prove something to your, I don't know, to your coach or somebody. You're
Hmm.
like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then you keep listening, and eventually that voice turns into, you really just want to be better, don't you? And it's like, get over here.
That's the one.
That's right. That's right. Dude, I had this conversation the other day after I did the lakes are really cold where I'm at, and so I
Right.
do wetsuit swims, but still my feet are numb. You know what I mean?
Uh, uh,
And so I got out and I realized, like, I'm building an agency scaling up stuff that it takes a lot of work, right? I work every day. But I realized I was 45 minutes into a swim, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, you haven't thought like anything for 45 minutes, like nothing. Just because I think the swim is the most meditative, because when you're swimming, your vision is constantly shifting between outside of the water and under the water, right? And so you can't really like look and daydream. There's no daydreaming, right? Because I think it's the visual piece of it, because it feels almost like rapid eye movement therapy or something, where you're
Yeah.
constantly shifting your purview. And so you don't have a chance. You're just interrupting any thought you have. It's very interesting. So I think if anybody wants to get into the meditative aspect, swimming is fabulous, unless you're just swimming like that, you know what I mean? But if you're doing like, if you're going in the water and alternating your vision, you get what I mean, right?
Yeah, no, I hadn't. The thing is, I live, I'm just on the south coast of the UK, so I literally, the
Yeah.
beach is like 5 minute walk that way. And I've
That's
been doing the
awesome.
cold, it's not swimming, it's just cold. So I'll go in and I'll
Yeah.
get like yay
Yeah.
deep, but I'm just there. Like, and
Yeah.
the winters here are, you know, to the point, again, you get out and you can't feel your feet. They're like blocks of ice, and you're thinking, Jesus Christ, I'm gonna have to get an
Yeah, dude.
amputation or something like that. Like that,
Yeah.
that
If I step on
intense.
a nail, I won't even
Yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way. You know, some rocks on the beach, but it doesn't even matter because I can't even feel them. But
Right.
no, I hadn't thought about. I mean, to be honest, that would probably make the experience a lot easier. The fact I'm getting a little bit of kinetic energy in the muscles as well, and the kind of
Yeah.
alternating vision between the water and the sky. But I'm usually just there
Yeah.
fighting against the waves, just trying to remain stoic. And you've got those pins
Yeah.
and needles sensation all over your body, and you feel like the
Yep.
inside of you is screaming. Those are my experiences, but your one sounds a little bit more pleasant. So maybe I'll have to give yours a go.
Well, I think we're keying into two different things, I think, because what I understand about the cold is that it's about acceptance, right? I learned this from my friend Matt Soul, he's a great teacher in this field. He talked about how when you get in the cold, you cannot change the cold.
Yeah.
As a spiritual practice, you are powerless to that force, right? And so he said the people who do the best with it are the people who are best, and this is true. If you think about the people who really struggle with cold therapy, it's people that have a very difficult time accepting hard circumstances.
Yeah.
I'm in control. I have to do something. No, you have to sit and accept it. And then the pain goes away, right? Because that's
Yeah.
what Wim Hof says too. He's like, just relax.
Yeah.
Relax,
Yeah.
let it go.
Yeah, no, it sounds so counterintuitive, but again, I remember because I suppose I have phases where I go in and out of kind of cold exposure. I wouldn't say it's one of my more consistent habits, but when I am doing it, I feel, you know, incredible. My dopamine sensitivity is just increases tenfold. But I had that. I go with like a little group. We've got like a little Telegram group together, and
Awesome.
the first couple of times I 100% identify with that, because that's kind of my mentality, is to be in control. And I'm trying to fight it, and people are just going, relax, dude, just relax. And we're going, this is so easier said than done. And then by
It's so much
session
easier
3
said.
or 4, you're just starting to like I'm consciously bringing my attention to the muscles that are like trying to twitch to keep myself up, and just try to relax, just try to breathe through it. And it's remarkable how you acclimatize to it, and it becomes something that again, it's just like you said, you just have to accept the circumstances, and the more you try and fight it, the worse it gets. And it's such a paradox. It's such a paradox. And there's so
Perfect
many
paradox.
the perfect paradox, and there's so many like transferable skills you can kind of take to that experience and integrate into different parts of your life. And it's amazing the utility that it has. Yeah, big fan. I'm actually going on Sunday, so yeah.
I love that. Dude, okay, so you said it's transferable, because what that made me think of with this is basically that skill is, I don't know if it's the skill, but it's one of the core skills. which is the ability to embrace the difficulty in exchange for the value. That piece, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Maybe there's a
Yes.
better way to frame that, but it's something like, it's why when I talk to people about cold therapy or sauna or fasting or endurance races or really anything where you're going to forego something that you desire or you're going to push yourself, I'm like, you're doing the same thing. It's all the same thing. You're just, it's, and even building businesses, it's the same thing. It's that there are understood value propositions on the other side of something that's wildly discomfortable, right? But the way that that's built is similar to the way that Jordan Peterson talks about this in phobias, right? The way that you overcome phobias is not by convincing somebody there's no snakes, right? Because there are snakes.
There are snakes, guys.
Slowly, there are definitely snakes, guys. Don't forget that you slowly build up your bravery in the face of it. And this is what I love about cold therapy specifically, is it's everybody has water. Not everybody, but everybody has access in some regard. If you're alive, it means you have some access to water, right? Some of that water is probably cold. If you even put, I mean, you can take the most buff, burly, tough guy, machismo man and put his hand in ice water and watch his eyes.
Yeah.
Right. And
they usually
he's
do the
got
worst.
Dragon. Oh, I know, a lot of times, yeah.
They do.
It's actually funny how true that is, dude. But the point is, like, and I've seen this with training about birthing as well, is that they'll do a mindfulness practice where they just set an ice cube in your hand and then you watch it and you say, what are you feeling? And you get that ache all the way up to your brachial plexus. I mean, it really aches, right? But you're being mindful. I think that's a perfect meditation practice for, especially for young men who are wanting to, like, well, where do I even start? Because, like, I know I tell people, like, I'm running a full distance Ironman, and a lot of the people that respond say, I could never do that. That's the first thing they say. And I'm like, first off, I didn't ask. No one's talking about you. Second off, you definitely could. Like, but that it's the same as if you see Wim Hof diving in off of a frozen waterfall, you know, and you're like, how did he even get there? He started with something very small, right? So when I started with running, it was like jogging a couple miles, right? Anybody can walk half a mile, you know what I mean? Like, but you start with half a mile and then you get to, I don't know, 3/4 of a mile. You go crazy, you know what I mean? But the point is that when you start with those mindfulness practices, when you bring that mindset to them, it's a different experience because you're actually getting the value of it. Because you could do it, you could feel the cold and set it down and have learned nothing and have grown zero, right? But there's a way in which you can approach all of the challenge of your life that you are capturing growth and getting better as a person. And the great news is there's challenge everywhere. Congrats. Like, there's opportunity for challenge every day.
I love that, and I love that, and I think I would maybe even go a step further and say, but I suppose it's congruent with your proposal, is that I do believe that the art of mindfulness and even, you know, meditation to make it the most inclusive practice for anyone everywhere, irrespective of your social or financial situations. You know, meditation is one of the most transferable skills into every kind of facet of your life.